So, just quickly going to go through about why assessment is essential, why it's important. Um, so just quick overview of assessment because later on, Brett's going to talk about your learning outcomes and setting it up with alignment of, to assignments for assessment purposes. So really, the assessment process, it's something that we're already doing in the classroom. It's something that we naturally do. Um, you know, and a lot of us it's just part of our daily process in the classroom. So, it's something that we know as well as something we want our students to know and learn. So we design our class activities accordingly. So you already have these class activities in Lamaku. And so, we're going to observe how students respond to these activities, right? So they're going to submit something or, we're going to observe what they do in the classroom. And then, we're going to measure the student learning through their various assignments, projects, tests, or some other means as well. And then, you know, we're going to assess these. So we're going to go and look at, well, how did they do? Did it work? Did it not work? And we're going to go and update the activities, maybe our pedagogy as well to better meet the students' needs. So, this is where we do a little self-reflection to see, what can I do to improve upon myself to better meet the students' needs as well. So, assessment, it is an important part of what we do, and we actually have policies based on assessment here at Leeward. Um, but it's also data that grows because really, as faculty, a lot of what we think about is just our course learning outcomes. You might also see these as student learning outcomes. But our course learning outcome assessment data, it actually flows up to our program learning outcomes data. And then our program learning outcome data actually flows up into our institutional learning outcome assessment data. So it's all linked together. So, this is why it's also very important for us to make sure that we're assessing our course data because it does help us assess our PLOs and our ILOs. And you're like, okay, but my course really isn't part of a program. Every course is part of a program because everything really does fit into our AA liberal arts degree. So do keep that in mind. And also, we can flip this around as well to think about that, it all works together because as instructors, we just think about how is my course doing? But then you have your program coordinators like Michael Kadri, who's in the room with you. Um, you know, and he's going to be thinking, well, how is my program doing? So he's going to look at his program learning outcomes and assessing them. So he's going to be looking at more big picture. And then administration, our deans are going to be looking, deans will, Vice Chancellor Carlos will be also looking at, our ILOs. How is the college doing as well? So we can also flip that pyramid upside down and, you know, understanding how it all does work together. So it's also essential for everyone on campus to understand how, the CLOs, PLOs, and ILOs also all fit together. So, and then what we do is we take this data and I'm trying to move the little window because it's in my way and clicked. So what we're going to do is we're going to document this process in our AMS, which is our assessment management system. And so we're going to put our course assessment data into this. And, I do say annually, it's nice if we do this more regularly so we have more data so that we understand how we're doing. Um, and so, and then there's a typo. Why does it matter? So, because it helps us track how our teaching is impacting our learning. And it also provides us evidence for continuous improvement. So, I know our policy states that we should be doing this every 5 years, but if we're doing it every 5 years, that's not really enough data to help us really understand how we're impacting our learning and providing us enough evidence for our continuous learning, or even thinking about your program coordinators to help them provide data for understanding how your program's doing, right? If you're only looking at stuff every 5 years, it's pretty hard to really see a big picture about how everything's doing. So that's why, annually it's a nice thing to do. And how Brent's going to show you to do this later, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to do this. Um, so benefits, it's going to help, instructors adjust, and it's going to help you improve your teaching at the program level. It's going to show how courses, fit together. It's also going to help the program, um, informs the program of improvements. So helping with closing the loop a little bit. At the institutional level, we might not all be aware, but programs create a ARPD, and a CRE, which is basically a report, which helps with guiding the college with completing, like, planning and resource allocations. So with our assessment information, it's just going to provide a wealth of information with to the college to help us make informed decisions about how we should allocate resources. So these are some of the benefits of doing our assessment. 'Cause sometimes we think, oh, assessment, it's just busy work, right? What's the point of assessment? But this is kind of some of the benefits of doing assessment is that it's helping us make better decisions about how we're allocating resources, um, in our ARPDs and our CREs as well. So you kind of saw this at convocation, so I'm not, if you were there, so I'm just going to jump over this, to save some time as well. But just again, it's the assessment cycle. And assessment should be a collaborative process, right? So faculty should be working together across sections. So if you have faculty that are teaching multiple sections of the same courses, right, you should be working together as well across programs. You should be collaborating with faculty across programs, communicating, coming up with, better ideas, share best practices, right? Right. We should be supporting each other's growth as educators, right? We should be working together to help one another out, to be helping each other improve, and which is great that we are doing this today because, right, now we're doing collaboration. So this is great. I'm glad we're here and we are working together and we are sharing best practices. So, yeah. And so, and we all do contribute to assessment. So, you know, we have faculty members are involved in the assessment process with updating learning outcomes. Your curriculum committee reviews learning outcomes, faculty senate reviews them. Uh, they become active, right? You have the assessment committee that helps faculty with, assessing them and providing data, right? You have, as we mentioned, program discipline uses the data. Administrators are using this to enhance, you know, provide resources. So, it is a whole campus, you know, um, is all involved in assessing, providing improvement with assessment data. So it's not just, by you providing data, you are directly impacting it, but it is a campus process. There's a lot of people involved in doing this. So do keep that in mind that, you know, there's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of work that gets done, based on what you're doing with your assessment. Um, right. And then again, just ending up, right, something we're trying to do on campus, something we've been trying to do is creating a culture of assessment, right? So we would like to have a shared collaborative responsibility around assessment that involves faculty, staff, administration, that, we ensure alignment with UH and Leeward system policies. So, yeah. And if you ever have any questions about anything regarding assessment, you can always reach out to me. I'm more than willing to help you. So yeah, just reach out, let me know.
Yeah. So this first slide here, this is kind of outlining the main steps. There aren't too many steps, but the first is to set up and import your learning outcomes. There are 3 in there from Leeward. So those are our institution learning outcomes. They've already put those into Lamaku. So I'll show you where you can go to get those and bring them into your course. But you can also add learning outcomes from your syllabus that in theory you've already got from Koali, Curriculum Manager. So you can manually put in learning outcomes as well. The second part is then to set up your assignments and align the outcomes in your course, once they've been put in your course, to your assignments, to your discussions, or to your quizzes. So then I'll show you a few steps on how you can do that alignment. And then I'll show you the grade book or grades and where you can tab over to what's called Mastery View. And that's where Lamaku will give you a dashboard of your learning outcomes. So grades will take you to the spreadsheet view where you can grade student work like you normally would with points and a rubric. But there's a tab in there to switch to Mastery View where you just see the students' names and then overall how your students have met the outcomes. And then practice makes perfect. We'll have time for you to apply what you've learned today. I covered the first two already. There's importing and there's also manually or directly entering outcomes. But the third thing down there to know is that right now, as it stands, Lamaku has 2 scales for assessing your learning outcomes. And so the 2 are...
I can add some
okay,
background
go ahead,
info.
Pete. Yeah.
So this was something that we had to make a decision on real quick. And so they asked us what we wanted and they gave us like barely any turnaround time. So I think UH Manoa went with the Hawaiian methodology, the Hawaiian words. But Leeward, at that point in time, we were basically doing the met, not met. So we said, let's just keep it with the 2, which is their default methodology that they had. We do have the ability, if we want to change this in the future. So it is not something that's set in stone. So we can tweak it if we would want to. It's just there is a process to go through doing it if we want to. So I think it's something that, in the future we could look at if we want to change what the scales are being used, which I think we probably would want to because we also have the not completed now. So we need that tertiary item now because of for students that do not complete the assignment, we need a way to mark that now. At least in the anthology, right? We have the met, not met, and then not completed. So neither of these scales really work for what we're doing at Leeward now.
Okay, so the steps here would be to edit your activity once you have it, because many of you already have a course activity in your course. You want to edit it. So we'll go through these processes in a bit, but this is just an overview of what we'll be doing. You want to edit your activity, whether it be an assignment, a discussion, or a quiz. And when you edit it, that's when you can align the outcomes to it. So you'll probably, if you're thinking about this conceptually, you'll want to start, you would have already thought of the activities and your learning outcomes, but in practicality, you'd have it already into Lamaku. You'd have your assignment set up, you'd have your quiz set up, you'd have your discussion set up, and then you'd connect the dots and align it. The instructions are key, especially if you're going to be trying to use the AI suggested alignment feature of Lamaku, because what the AI will do is it'll look at your description of your activity or assignment, and then it will suggest from your list of learning outcomes which ones might apply. And it's just a suggestion. You can uncheck it if you disagree. So the key, have instructional details in your description that will then help with the suggested alignment, but you can always uncheck the suggested alignment and manually apply specific learning outcomes as you see fit. The last slide is about grades. So in the grades, grade book in Lamaku, there's going to be a column. You'll switch to Mastery View. There's going to be a column with your names of your students, and then across the top is a row, and you'll mouse over the row to then see a little bar graph of how they've met, how many have met in percentages of the outcome. Okay, so course outcomes. Up here are the couple of buttons that are worth talking about. So yes, course admin, assessments, and then learning outcomes. And so this is where you're going to add or import your learning outcomes and or choose the scale that you're going to use to assess them. This first one's add outcome, And so this one is where you'll be manually, if you had, so for example, your course learning outcomes, this is where you would put them in. The short code would be something like what you see down here, ed279clo1. That's something I manually put in there. That's a file name that I manually thought up, and that's helpful, but that's your short code. So you could put in there your course and the CLO. You can carry these forward to future classes, so that's why sometimes I guess it's nice to keep them sorted accordingly. But that's the short code, and I guess it's optional. I don't see an asterisk there. Below that, that's where you paste in or type in your learning outcome. So CLO1, for example, I would normally paste this, write reflections using collaborative tools, into this box and save. And that's it for putting a learning outcome into your course. So you would do that for the learning outcomes from your syllabus for your specific course. And then they just show up here as a list, right? So in this one, Ed279, there's like 4 CLOs that I manually put in. Below that, you'll see these ILO 1, 2, 3. Those are institutional learning outcomes, and those come in a slightly different way. So at the top, let me cancel this. At the top, there's a button right next to the add outcomes called import outcomes. And if you click down on that one, there's a few choices. The first one is import from Achievement Standards Network. In theory, it's connected to national bodies that have learning outcomes to share. But the more important one is below that, import from outcome set. Now at this time, we do have outcomes in the system from the various UH campuses. So you select Leeward, and then these are our 3 institutional learning outcomes. That doesn't mean you're going to reference them in all of your activities or any of your activities, but this is how you would include them in your course. You select them like that, and you say import selected. And then the third step down there is import from file, which will import from a CSV or a spreadsheet type of a data set. So if you had some of your learning outcomes that might not be official in the outcome set, like a Leeward ILO is, but more efficiently brought in. For example, we have our Leeward DE guidelines, and or we have our new UH quality online standards. If someone was to put some time into putting those into a CSV sheet, we could get them into this course through this method, import from file. And then the value of that is, because those are guidelines and standards that are shared amongst our university or our campus, if someone did a CSV or a file like that, it could be shared. So those are the 3 approaches, either the outcome set, which is an official set of learning outcomes set up by your campus, import from file, if it's a somewhat common set of learning outcomes, you could import it from a file, and then add outcomes would be your course by course unique outcomes. To the right is another button called More Actions. And why that's important is the first one says Unlink Outcomes. So if I'm going to use this particular course that has been set up with these learning outcomes in the future, you do the copy course import, for future semesters. But let's say there's a slight change to one of your learning outcomes in the future. You probably want to unlink in your future course before you make that change. Because when you copy a course forward, it's my understanding that the learning outcomes are in the system. They're only in there once. It references them. So if you were to change your learning outcomes in like spring, it will go back and it will change it for the fall, the reference learning outcomes that you used in the fall. So if you're going to make a change to a learning outcome, you want to unlink it first. And then similarly for the deleting outcomes, you'll want to unlink it first before you go delete it there. So the last thing here is the settings in the upper right corner. The settings, this is where you get to choose between the 2 types of levels of assessment scales. These are the 2 we were talking about earlier. Okay. All right, so that's setting up your learning outcomes in your course. It will look something like this as a list. So once it's in there, now you can do stuff with it. So let me go to an assignment. So assignments, again, I already have the assignment in my Lamaku course, and it's really helpful if you have a description for your assignment already in there. So I will pick one, let's just choose this one, Learner's Choice A. That's just the name of this assignment, and if I go to edit the assignment, then what you'll normally see is it'll say outcomes, and then you'll just add them. So in this example, I've added 3 already. But this is where it resides. You edit the assignment, it will say outcomes, and then you just click on that. Now this is where you can opt to ask for suggested alignments. So now it's saying you want to add an outcome. These are the outcomes that you just saw briefly a minute ago in our list of learning outcomes. Now you can choose from them here by just clicking on them, right? You can do that manually, or up at the top, there's a suggested outcome alignment feature. And when you click on that, it launches a small little AI thing that will look at your description of your assignment, and it will look at your learning outcomes, and it will suggest some learning outcomes. Now, I think I've already accepted the suggestion one, so that's why these are not checked off. But it will have it checked off for you. And then you can look at it and you can laugh, or you can look at it and agree. If you're laughing, you can uncheck it and you don't have to accept it. But if you want to accept it, you just click on Save. In any event, it takes you back to this screen where you have your assignment. And for this particular assignment, it aligns to course CLO 1, 2, and 3. And you can always remove those by clicking on the X. And that is basically alignment of your learning outcomes to an assignment. It's very similar if you were aligning it to a discussion. The interesting thing about quizzes is it's slightly different for quizzes. So the way it works in Lamaku is it's much more simple. You align questions to outcomes. I guess it doesn't work for the random draw situation, but you have to open your quiz, come down to the question, select the question, and then under More Actions, it will say Align to Outcomes. And at the moment, that's how you do it for quizzes. So it's not as straightforward as assignments or discussions.
So when you have like a question, you have like 100 questions that you draw from, you have to go.
Yeah, I don't know that it would work for the draw from type of a question. If you're doing the random draw, which most people do, I don't see the way to do it. But that's just me. Maybe I'm not seeing the way to do it for quizzes. Yeah, so that's assignments, discussions, and quizzes. Now, once you have it aligned, then, let me hide my little thing here. Then under grades, what you'll see is this little bubble pop or this tab button pop up called Mastery View. If you don't have outcomes set up, you won't see this option under grades, view achievement by. So when you click on Mastery View, instead of seeing the traditional spreadsheet, let me zoom out here a little bit, you see this view, and this view will tell you, as you mouse over it, how the class did meeting that learning outcome in particular. So if you had a lot of learning outcomes, then basically this row here would be long and you would scroll horizontally. But these are the learning outcomes for this class, and as I mouse over it, it will tell me, display a graph of how this class did overall. So this is the grade view, right? Now let's go back and let's assess one. I think I do have one that we can assess. So let's look at an assignment. So I think it was Learner's Choice A1. Student view, that's submitted there. Now from the instructor view, I would come here at A1, let's see. And let's see, view submissions. There should be a submission from this one here. Okay, so let's look at my test student. Okay, so here's the student's assignment submission, student comment, see my file. On the right, if you were going to do the rubric, you could do the rubric here. Overall score, if you're going to manually put in a score, feedback, and then down at the bottom, this is the outcomes area. And so this is the one that we're just saying it's not really connected to the rubric. So then in this particular one, you say got it or not yet. The nice thing is you can always come back and change this if you want to later on. When you hit publish, if you switch to master view, now there should be something interesting. But yeah, thanks for coming. But that is learning outcomes, and it's an interesting feature of Lamaku.